What? What about the rest of the family? Matilda was very clear when drafting the will. She said that none of her other relatives deserved to benefit from her death, as they had neglected her in life. Therefore, she left everything to her granddaughter, to use as she sees fit. Never! That can't happen! We deserve some of that money. We are his children, by the way. I was waiting for her to die so I could get some money and buy a house. This can't be happening. We will settle this in court. Aaron must have manipulated her or something.
This is unheard of. Surely Matilda was a bit out of her mind when she had that thing drafted. It should be nullified and the money distributed equally among all the children.
Ever since I was a child, I've always been very close to my grandmother Matilda. This wasn't so much due to a matter of personality, nor because I was the only granddaughter in the family, but rather a purely practical matter. I was the one who lived closest to her, and therefore also the one who visited her most often. My grandmother had 3 kids: my dad, my Uncle Sam, and my Aunt Jessica. My grandmother lived alone in a large house with its own garden, in a small town about 20 miles from the city. All of her children were already adults, with their own lives established, and had decided many years ago to leave behind life in the countryside to settle indefinitely in the city, where they already had their respective jobs, apartments, and where their children were enrolled in school. One could say, perhaps, that the idea of living at that distance was to be able to visit Grandma Matilda on weekends when people were less busy with their day-to-day activities, but that simply didn't happen. You see, I had lost both my parents in a tragic car accident when I was young. So Grandma basically raised me, and I had a bond with her. I can remember we had a lot in common. So even when I moved out from her house, I was often the only granddaughter to visit and check on her.
I wish the rest of your cousins and uncles would make the effort to come by more often.
They don't?
Not even on Sundays, and I know for a fact that nobody is busy on Sundays. It wouldn't be the first time I hear that one of my children has used the last day of the week to go fishing or to take the kids to the pool. I'm not even asking for them to come every week. Once a month would be enough for me.
Don't be discouraged. Next month we're having a family gathering. You'll be able to see them all there. That should have been a comfort, but it really didn't mean anything remotely similar. The family gathering I was talking about was an event we organized once a year, where all of Matilda's relatives would gather on a Saturday at her house for lunch. It was more of a charade than anything else, where we all pretended to get along well and were very close to each other for as long as the gathering lasted. These kinds of meetings never went wrong, in the sense that no one fought. However, they didn't exactly serve to bring people together either, because as soon as the clock struck 6 in the evening, everyone dispersed to their respective homes, as if the workday were already over, and they wanted nothing more to do with the matter until the following year. It was a pity how unsupportive they were of Grandma Matilda, but back then I didn't dwell on it much. Her loss was my gain after all, since I enjoyed being with her, and the fact that she didn't have visitors so often allowed me to spend more time at her house. So, I spent all my childhood and adolescence in this routine, until I became the only one who visited my grandmother weekly. And I thought it would continue to be that way, until my grandmother became seriously ill and suddenly my uncles and cousins started to visit regularly.
What's this miracle of you coming to see me?
What miracle are you talking about? We've always been here. We've just been a bit busy in the city, with our work.
Yes, of course, even on vacations. Every weekend? I hope you're not waiting for me to drop dead so you can get your hands on my inheritance, because that would be in very poor taste, considering how neglected you've left me. We would never do such a thing. It's unbelievable that you would think that, considering how much we've always helped you. And furthermore, speaking of helping, how would you feel about moving in with us? I'm sure you'd be more comfortable and better taken care of. It's not necessary. I prefer to stay in my house. I already have Erin to take care of me. She's studying nursing and is perfectly capable of taking care of me.
If my relatives were upset that Grandma refused to move in with them, they didn't let me know with words. They simply repeated the offer countless times in the following months, until my grandmother finally passed away, ensuring that she would have a better quality of life in any of their respective apartments. I felt bad for doubting their good intentions, but I couldn't help it. It seemed very strange that they spent years ignoring my grandmother, and then suddenly, when she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, they showed up like good Samaritans to take care of her, under the pretext that family is there to help each other in difficult times. In any case, My suspicions that there was foul play somewhere became evident when the will was read.
All of Matilda's possessions, including the house and the money in her bank accounts, will be left to Aaron. What? What about the rest of the family? Matilda was very clear when drafting the will. She said that none of her other relatives deserved to benefit from her death, as they had neglected her in life. Therefore, she left everything to her granddaughter, to use as she sees fit. Never! That can't happen! We deserve some of that money. We are his children, by the way. I was waiting for her to die so I could get some money and buy a house. This can't be happening. We will settle this in court. Aaron must have manipulated her or something.
This is unheard of. Surely Matilda was a bit out of her mind when she had that thing drafted. It should be nullified and the money distributed equally among all the children.
My grandmother was perfectly lucid until her last days.
This will was drafted several years before she was diagnosed with her illness. Furthermore, we are professionals here. We wouldn't have allowed a woman who wasn't in her full faculties to draft such a document.
That served to momentarily silence my relatives, seeing that their anger had nowhere to go. My grandmother was richer than they initially imagined, and now that all that money was going to me, my life was going to be even better. If they wanted to keep a portion of the inheritance, they would have to do something about it, and boy, they did. At first, they tried to kindly convince me that what was stated in the will was a mistake, that even if Grandma had written those terrible things on purpose, I was a good person, and surely wouldn't leave them without their share of those assets. Then, seeing that didn't work to make me give in, they opted for more drastic measures.
We didn't want to resort to this, but since you're forcing our hand, we'll have to take it to court. We are sure you manipulated our mother into giving you everything.
To court? What nonsense. And how do you plan to do that? It's already been established that Grandma drafted the will long before she got sick, and she was always of sound mind.
We'll see about that when it's properly analyzed by experts. And believe me, when this is over, you'll regret turning your back on your family when they needed you the most.
Although it was to be expected, right? She's always been ungrateful.
I didn't know what they meant by those insults, because in the end, I was the only one who was with my grandmother until her last moments. But if they wanted to spend the little money they had left on lawyers to try to win a lost case, that was fine by me. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, so I had nothing to worry about. The problem arose when I realized that my relatives, in the war they had waged against me, started talking to the press and appearing on local television to speak ill of me, saying that I had always been the black sheep of the family, and that now, due to a supposed mistake in the will of a sick elderly woman, I was refusing to provide them with much-needed money for them to continue subsisting. It was ridiculous, and therefore I thought it would be appropriate to return the favor in a similar manner, instead of waiting for the verdict of the professionals. So I spoke to a friend.
What do you plan to do? I have some friends who work at the local newspaper. If you want, we can let them know so you can tell your side of the story.
No, that would sound like I need to defend myself from an attack because I could be guilty. I prefer to leave the press for last. First, I would like to try another approach. Did you know that my relatives are extremely superstitious?
And what does that have to do with this?
I was just thinking that, given their belief in horoscopes and astrology, it's very likely that if a medium tells them to do something, they'll comply without hesitation. In fact, I knew that consulting mediums and watching shows about the supernatural was a common activity for most of my family members, as they loved those things and were strong believers in the mystical. So I got to work. I convinced a friend of mine to read the cards for my uncles, without them knowing that he had any connection to me. In the end, my friend did what any tarot reader would have done when encountering a potential client. He gave them hope that everything would turn out well, that no matter how dark the clouds seemed on the horizon, luck would eventually be on their side. In other words, this fake medium convinced my relatives to invest as much as they could in lawyers to defend their case, to have no fear of overspending, because in the end, the verdict would be in their favor and they would receive much more money than they invested. Of course, it was all lies. Not only did my relatives have a lot to lose, but while they were distracted by the deception, I took the opportunity to clean my new house from Grandma, and while doing so, I found a recording of her that ended up being crucial for my case.
It's a recording from 5 years ago, long before the lady became ill. And in it, Mrs. Matilda explains her reasons for leaving her entire fortune to Aaron. That's not possible. Surely Aaron manipulated her to make that video and change the will, just as we already told the press. No, Aaron had no knowledge of the video's existence until recently. No one knew except Matilda and her notary. Additionally, along with the video, official documents have been found proving that the elderly woman was in full possession of her faculties.
No, there was no trickery involved. Grandma Matilda even went so far as to insult her own children in that recording, calling them ungrateful for not giving her more love and attention in life. So it was clear who the real villains were in that story. It wasn't even necessary to go to court because it was clear that the inheritance would all be mine. I ended up giving that final press conference clarifying everything and finally responding to my family's threats. They, on the other hand, had spent too much on a lost case that left my aunt and uncle broke, and to make matters worse. Now the whole town was aware of the kind of people they were. Neighbors vandalized their houses or stopped speaking to them altogether, and they, unable to recover the invested money or return to the pristine reputation they had before all this happened, they were forced to move far away. And I heard my uncle in the new state mows people's lawns while my aunt took up a cleaning job. As for me, I felt at peace. I had won, and they wouldn't bother me anymore. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
So after you hear my story, you might be confused as to why I'm such a happy person. You see, growing up, my sister Mary and I lived in a small town. Our parents were kind and loving people. They always made sure that we were happy. And although we weren't wealthy, they had a way of making money stretch so that all our needs were taken care of. Unfortunately, when I was 14 and my sister was 12, they were involved in a terrible accident. They were out running errands and were driving on the highway when their car hit a patch of ice and spun out and caused a massive car accident. Losing our parents at such a young age was almost too much for us to take, but we still had each other, and while we were close, we did become even closer as a result. Not only were we siblings, but we became best friends as well. Not long after the funeral, our grandparents took us in and did their best to fill our parents' roles, to the best of their abilities. It was a huge adjustment, but we leaned on each other for support and guidance, and both of us managed to do well in school. We both went to university and graduated at the top of our respective classes. I became a civil engineer, while my sister became a pharmacist. Sadly, our grandparents passed away soon after we graduated, once again leaving us alone. Being orphaned for the second time in our young lives was hard to handle, but we did our best to persevere. Between the money from our new careers and the inheritance that we received from both our parents and now our grandparents, we were able to buy a house and a car for each of us. For some siblings, this would have been an awkward situation, but we didn't mind. The house that we bought was big enough that we barely saw each other. I mainly lived on the first floor while my sister lived on the second. For a while, we focused on our careers and were happy, until once again, tragedy paid us a visit. I was inspecting a high-rise that I had helped to design when a crane operator hit the building above me and caused some building materials to fall and land on me. All I can remember is looking up and seeing wood and steel falling above me, and then waking up in the hospital. Thankfully, I recovered, but my spine had been severely damaged. With a lot of physical therapy, I would be able to one day be able to stand and walk short distances, but I would need a wheelchair for the rest of my life. For months, I was depressed, but Mary lifted my spirits. She took care of me and kept pushing me to do my best with my physical therapy. If it weren't for her, I'm not sure that I would ever walk again. I was so grateful for her. A few years later, though, I'm sorry to say that I was shocked to hear what would normally be happy news.
Henry, I have some great news.
Oh, what's that, sis?
I've been seeing this boy, Jared, and last night he proposed to me and I said yes. Henry, I'm getting married.
I know that I should have been excited for her, but unfortunately, all I could think about was that I would be all alone, that there was a chance that I might lose my best friend. Thankfully, though, I chased those feelings away, as I knew that Mary had always been there for me, and even if she got married, none of that would change. And so I began to feel just as excited as she felt, and I cheered the wondrous news. A week later, she introduced me to her new fiancé. And at first he seemed okay, but there were subtle things that made me question if he was the right one for her.
Henry, this is my fiancé, Jared.
Hello, Jared. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah. It's nice to meet you too. So, Mary was saying that since your parents are dead, that she wanted you to walk her down the aisle for the ceremony. With your chair, how are you supposed to be able to do that? Well, I can actually walk short distances, but it takes a lot out of me. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it will be beautiful, and it will mean a lot to me too. Plus, he can lean on me for support as well.
I don't think Mary saw it, but Jared made a face when she said this. If he was trying to hide his disgust of my wheelchair, then he wasn't hiding it very well. The weeks passed, and the two of them discussed more of the wedding plans. A few times, Jared asked if Mary didn't want his father to walk her down the aisle instead, but she was adamant that I do it. I honestly felt like he was embarrassed that I would be a part of the ceremony. During this time, Jared moved in with us and began to make quite the mess around the house. He would even leave dirty dishes in my portion of the house. I tried to bring this up to Mary, but she just brushed it off. Between work and planning for the wedding, she was doing all that she could, and so I made plans to speak with Jared and establish some ground rules. Feeling confident, I went into the living room to speak with him, but he was nowhere to be seen. He did, however, leave his cell phone on the couch. Normally, I would never dream of looking at someone else's phone, but it was vibrating like crazy. I was curious, and so I picked it up and saw that he had received several messages from two different women, one named Wanda and the other Stacy. I know that I shouldn't have read their messages, but I needed to know who they were, and they both were thanking him for the lovely gifts that he had given them, and for the amazing dates that he was taking them on. I could tell that neither knew about the other, and I definitely suspected that my sister didn't know about them. Suddenly, I heard someone coming down the stairs, and I braced myself to confront Jared about how he was treating my sister, when both my sister and Jared came into the room. Jared, do you have something to tell my sister? Maybe you would like to introduce her to Wanda, or maybe to Stacy.
Oh, Henry, what on earth are you talking about?
You see? This is why I don't want his crippled butt at the wedding. He's trying to wedge himself in between us. He can't stand that we're happy and that he isn't, so he is trying to break us up.
Henry, please tell me this isn't true.
Of course it isn't. I've only ever wanted you to be happy. But not only does he hate me just because I'm crippled, but he's also cheating on you too. I quickly threw Jared's phone to Mary, who looked at it and instantly got angry once she started reading the messages. Hey, that's my phone! How dare you look at it? Before my sister could respond, Jared slapped her so hard she fell to the floor and then grabbed his phone. It looked like he was going to hit her again, so I quickly wheeled over and began punching him. While I may be stuck in a wheelchair, I do have very strong arms, and after hitting him a few times, he got scared and then ran out of the house. Once, I was able to calm my sister down and make sure that she wasn't seriously hurt. We called the police and reported that Jared had assaulted my sister. It didn't take long for the police to find and arrest him. As it turned out, this hadn't been the first time that he had assaulted a woman before. This made the judge that was assigned to his case very strict on him, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. She was devastated, but of course she called off the wedding after learning what kind of man that Jared truly was. Heartbroken, she leaned on me, and I did my best to support her through the healing process. The one positive thing that I took away from this, though, was that I was a bit too reliant on the idea that it would always be just my sister and I. And so, even though it was difficult, I moved out and got a house of my own. This opened up a lot of doors for both of us, and I'm happy to say that not long afterwards that Mary met someone amazing who treated her like a queen. We even became good friends as well. As for me, well, it took a bit longer as I'm very shy, but I'm happy to say that I recently got engaged, and you would never guess what happened. Since Mary had pushed me so much with my physical therapy, not only was I able to walk her down the aisle for her wedding to her new boyfriend, but I did so for my own as well. In fact, I no longer even need my wheelchair. My future has never looked brighter. Thanks for watching, like, share, and subscribe. Hi, my name is David, and I used to be a postman. My wife is Latrice, and she's a pharmaceutical saleswoman. It's been 3 years since I married Latrice. Our marriage has been great and steady, and full of the kind of love one could only dream of having. We've suffered some road bumps along the way. I lost my job, and Latrice has really had to step up to provide for us. But while I search for a new job, I've been taking care of everything around the house. The new routine is one we've settled into rather quickly. It seems no matter what trial we face, we can always face it together, as one. At least I thought we could until my father-in-law, Joel, came to visit. The visit seemed innocuous at first. He laughed with my wife and pretended I didn't exist, except to give me a painfully stiff handshake. But that wasn't anything abnormal. It wasn't until my wife left for work that he scowled at me. "Why aren't you getting ready for work?" I lost my job, sir." "Lost your job? And you ain't got a new one yet?" "I'm looking, but..." "So you're going to sit around the house all day and do nothing while my baby girl is going out and breadwinning for the both of you?" "Sir, it's not like that. I knew it from the beginning. I told my daughter from the beginning you weren't going to provide, and here you are, sitting at home while she has to make ends meet." "I'm looking for a job, sir, and I've been taking care of everything at home while she's out for work." "Well..." Joel reached his finger out and dragged his finger across the table. "This table seems pretty dusty." "You'd better get to work then." I wanted to argue. My mind raced and my face flushed with heat. But despite my anger, Joel was right. I did have work to do around the house before I started applying for more jobs. So that's what I did. I put away the clean dishes, put on a load of laundry, put out some ground beef to thaw for dinner, and, yes, did some light dusting. All the while, Joel kept a close and judgmental eye on me, on every move I made. But once I finished the chores around the house, I sat down at the desk in my wife and I's office and began searching for jobs on my laptop. It wasn't long before my father-in-law poked his head in and asked what I was doing. "I'm looking for a job, sir." "It sure don't look like you're applying for no job." Joel gestured to my clothes, a pair of tattered jeans and a t-shirt that didn't quite fit my frame. "It's laundry day, sir." "Where's your suit?" "I don't need one, sir. I'm applying for jobs online." "Online? Well, no wonder you can't find no job, looking on that internet." Back in my day, we dressed up in our best suit and walked right through the front door of a business with our resume. That's your problem, right there. You can't get a job staring at that screen all day. I was shocked. My father-in-law had never been my biggest fan, but he had never spoken to me like this either. I asked for my father-in-law to leave, and though he called me ungrateful and a disappointment, he left. Later that night, I washed the dishes from that night's dinner, while Latrice answered emails on her phone. I'd been thinking about what her father said all day, and I wanted to speak to her about it. But I waited until she was done with her phone to speak up. "Hey, honey."
Yeah?
"I need to speak with you. It's about your dad."
What about him?
He was very rude to me today. He thinks that I'm a disappointment because I don't have a job."
Did you tell him you're looking for a new one?
I did, but he wouldn't hear it. He thinks applying for jobs online is me being lazy. He wants me to put on a suit and walk into a business.
I'm so sorry, David. He's always been very old-fashioned. He shouldn't have spoken to you like that.
What if he's right?
What do you mean?
What if he's right? I lost my job. You've had to be the only source of income in our household. I feel like I've failed you, Latrice. Failed us.
David, no, you haven't failed us at all. Look, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. How would you feel about continuing what we're doing now?
You don't want me to get a job?
Of course I do, only if you want to, though. But think about it, David. My job makes enough money for both of us to live comfortably, and I've really been enjoying coming home to a house without chores. It's been a nice change of pace. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if one of us stayed home while the other went to work.
What about your dad?
Oh, don't worry about my dad. I'll take care of him. I'll have a long talk with him tomorrow about the way he's been treating you. So, what do you think? Is that something you would be interested in?
Why don't I sleep on it? I'll think about it and get back to you.
Sure, David. Just let me know.
Latrice's words kept me up all night, blinking wide-eyed at the ceiling and wondering what our future would look like without both of us contributing financially. She was right. Her job paid plenty. And since I'd lost my job, the house had never been cleaner. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad thing to keep going the way we were. But above Latrice's voice in my head, another, much louder one haunted me. Joel's voice. It yelled at me, telling me I was a disappointment, a failure, all horrible things. That morning, Latrice and I shared a goodbye kiss, and she went off for work while I stayed, maintaining the house, running errands, and applying for jobs. The day had been quiet, but then a knock sounded at the door. It was Joel. He was furious, yelling at me for asking him to leave the day before. "You ought to know better than to treat your elders like that, boy." "Yes, sir." "Now come here. I got something to show you." Joel led me to his car, full of blankets and old food wrappers. There was also an old, musty suit laid across the back seat. He grabbed it and tossed it at me. I barely caught it in time. "Now you're gonna put that suit on, take your resume, and go down to that cleaning service down the road and ask for a job since you like cleaning so much." "What? Joel, what are you talking about?" "You heard me, boy, and don't come back to this house until you have a job. I don't care if you have to go door to door asking to clean people's houses. You don't come back to this house until I know you can provide for my daughter." I could only watch with the suit clenched in my hands as Joel ran into my house. I tried to follow him, but he shut and locked the door. I banged on the door and yelled for him to let me in, but he refused. His face appeared in the window. "You heard me, boy. Don't come back to this house until you got a job." "You mean my house?" "You mean my daughter's house." I tried to grab my phone, but it wasn't in either of my pockets. I had left it inside the house. There was no way for me to contact Latrice. I had been kicked out of my own house by my own father-in-law. I was too shocked to be angry. So, with no other place to go, suit still in my hand, I walked down the street all the way to the nearest cafe, biting back the tears welling in my eyes. When I arrived at the cafe, I set the suit down on the seat next to me and placed my head in my hands. Hours passed of me, trying not to cry and hoping my wife would follow her usual routine. Thankfully, she did. She walked into the cafe at the same time she always said she did. But when her eyes locked with mine, her eyebrows furrowed and she approached me.
David?
"Hey, honey."
What are you doing here? Is that my dad's suit?
"Your dad kicked me out of the house.
What?
He said that if I don't get a job, I can't come back to the house."
But I spoke to him this morning. You know what? No more of this. Come on, we're headed home.
"What are you going to do?"
Remind my dear old father that I married you and not him.
Latrice drove us back home. I couldn't shake the guilt that she had to spend her break dealing with this instead of getting her afternoon snack and coffee. But her face was so filled with rage, and I recognized from all our years together that when she's that angry, the best thing I could do is let her do her thing. When we arrived at the house, Latrice slammed her fist against the door, demanding her father to open up. When Joel came to the door, his face was set with the same expression as my wife's. "Did your husband get a job yet?"
You listen to me. I am tired of you treating my husband as less than because he doesn't have a job. I don't care how things were done back in your day. Times have changed, Dad. David is looking for a job, and if he isn't, that's fine too. I told him he could stay home and handle the household chores while I work if he wanted to.
"Now why would you do such a foolish thing?
It's not foolish, Dad. David and I are a team. We don't have to both work. My job makes enough money for both of us, and if David wants to stay home, he can do that. If he wants to get a job or 2 or 3, he can do that too. It's not about providing, Daddy. It's about taking care of each other. You may not approve of how we do things, but shouldn't you just be happy that David treats me right? Shouldn't you be happy that I come home, tired from work every day, to a home-cooked meal, to a clean house, to a smiling husband that's going to watch movies with me until we fall asleep together? You never did that for Mom. You went to work, then went home and went to sleep. You never spent time with her, and that's why she left.
I was stunned. I had never known this about Joel. I remembered Latrice's mom had been sad apart from Joel at our wedding, but had never thought much of it. Joel's eyes welled with tears, and his jaw set.
"I'm sorry, but I did everything I could to take care of you. That's why I worked so many hours, why I couldn't spend much time with you or your mother. I did that so you would have a roof over your head, food in your stomach."
I know, Daddy, and I appreciate that. But I would have gone hungry if it meant I actually got to spend time with you when I was younger. I'm a grown-up now, Dad. I'm not going to go hungry if David doesn't have a job. My job is great. I don't need a silent provider. I need a partner. Someone who's always there for me. That's what David is.
Maybe you're right. I'm so sorry, sweetheart.
I don't want your apology, Dad, but I think you do owe one to someone else.
Joel looked me in the eyes, a tear streaming down his cheek. For the first time in years, he looked at me with something that wasn't disappointment, resentment, or anger. Instead, guilt painted his face. He offered his hand, and I took it. He shook my hand, gentle and not overly stiff. I'm sorry, son. I guess I just don't want my daughter to be put in a bad position. I can't provide for her anymore. So when I thought that you couldn't, I was scared.
What do you mean, Dad?
I wasn't going to tell you, Latrice, honey, but I lost my job as well.
What?
And the house. I've been living out of my car the past few weeks. Suddenly, the food wrappers and mess inside of Joel's car made sense.
Oh, Daddy. Why didn't you say anything?
I was embarrassed. Well, why don't you stay with us? You would do that for me? After the way I treated you?
As long as you promise not to lock my husband out of the house anymore.
No, I can't stay at your house free of charge. I'll help you find a job until you get back on your feet. I can show you how to use the internet and how to make an online application. I would certainly appreciate that, David. Latrice, thank you both so much for this.
Of course, Daddy.
For the next few months, Joel stayed in the guest room of mine and Latrice's house. I showed him how to use the computer, how to build a resume online, and where to apply. Joel even offered to help out around the house every now and then. Eventually, he found a good job at a carpentry business, and soon after, managed to find his own apartment. My relationship with Joel improved over time. More and more, he smiled and joked with me, offered to take me fishing, even shared a beer with me one fateful game day. Latrice got a raise from her job, only further securing our future, and I eventually found a part-time job at a bakery to fill the days when there isn't much to do at home. Our lives are improving every day, and though it isn't always perfect, our future is brighter than it has ever been. Thanks for watching. Our mother spent all of her time on Veronica and was at her beck and call. Sometimes she wouldn't even get the chance to cry before our mother was there, doting on her every need. Veronica grew up into a healthy young girl, but our mother didn't stop doting on her. My other siblings and I were always in the background. While our mother raised Veronica, I basically raised the other two. The rest of my siblings and I didn't want much, but Veronica demanded everything.
I need a new phone. This isn't the right brand.
I will get you a new one, darling Kelsey.
My other siblings and I were given used or passed down things, but she needed brand new. My mom always gave in to her demands. Hi, my name is Kelsey, and I'm 24 with 3 siblings. Life was good when it was just me and my mom, but she wanted more children, and after my youngest sister Veronica was born, everything changed. When Veronica was born, she was a very sick baby. Doctor after doctor came to see her, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. Our mother kept trying. She refused to give up on Veronica, and eventually she found the doctor who was able to cure Veronica. After that, our family dynamic changed, after our dad died in a car accident. Our mother spent all of her time on Veronica and was at her beck and call. Sometimes she wouldn't even get the chance to cry before our mother was there, doting on her every need. Veronica grew up into a healthy young girl, but our mother didn't stop doting on her. My other siblings and I were always in the background. While our mother raised Veronica, I basically raised the other two. The rest of my siblings and I didn't want much, but Veronica demanded everything.
I need a new phone. This isn't the right brand.
I will get you a new one, darling Kelsey.
My other siblings and I were given used or passed down things, but she needed brand new. My mom always gave in to her demands. I need shoes for school.
Too bad. I need my nails done.
Can't you use the ones you have?
They have holes in them, and the weather app says it's going to rain this week.
Just tape them up. It's picture day tomorrow, and I want my nails done.
You would think shoes would take priority, but our mom took Veronica out anyway, and she came home that same day with a new manicure. Even when it came to medical needs, Veronica always got the best care. One time, my brother broke his leg when he was 10 and I was 18. I had to drive him to the hospital because our mother was at Veronica's ballet rehearsal, where she skinned her knee and was rushed to the doctor right away. My mom got mad because I was with my brother, and she demanded I visit Veronica to show my support.
Where were you? I need to go find the nurse. None of the beds are made and Veronica needs to lay down on one of them.
She just skinned her knee. Why does she need a bed?
Because my knee hurts. I can't play Ophelia if my knee scars. What if people can see it through the leggings? Kelsey's just jealous because I am talented.
At least one of my daughters is going to be a star. No, of course, darling. Kelsey wouldn't want to take that away from you by being unsupportive again. Would you, Kelsey?
Kelsey's just jealous. She's a talentless hack. You'll be watching me be the amazing one our whole lives. You may as well get the practice in now.
Fine, I can watch her. I knew our mom wouldn't budge when it came to her favorite daughter, so I gave in. Then she left us alone in the room to go bother the nurses. Despite my promise, I didn't pay much attention to Veronica while our mother was gone because I was more worried about our brother. She didn't complain about her knee to me, and I was fine with that until I realized she was being really quiet. Too quiet. I finally looked over at her and caught her shoving some of the free lollipops into her pockets. The jar said to only take one, but she had emptied it completely. I scolded her, not that it would do much, but I didn't really think about it. When our mother came back, Veronica cried about me yelling at her, and I got in trouble, but I was used to it by then. So, when things started going missing over the years, I always had the lollipop incident in the back of my head. If anyone left money out, or any clothes, makeup, or jewelry, it would disappear. When both of my brothers went to a baseball game for a school trip, they came home excited about a signed fly ball they caught. It was their prized possession for 3 days before it went missing. I didn't have any proof it was Veronica, but her things never went missing. My other siblings and I were getting fed up. We all knew it was Veronica, but it didn't matter how many times we told our mother or who told her. So, I came up with the perfect revenge that would finally break the spell Veronica had over our mother. My brothers wanted to help. I need both of you to find that family heirloom, the necklace from Mom's grandma. I think she keeps it hidden in her room. I've been saving up money to buy a camera, and I finally have one. We're going to catch Veronica this time. They both nodded, and we got to work setting up our trap for Veronica. My siblings managed to find our grandma's precious necklace while our mother was out shopping for Veronica's favorite snacks. I set up the camera in a hidden spot, while my brothers put the necklace on the kitchen table where Veronica would easily find it. Then I texted Veronica to tell her our mother had brought home her snacks. Once the plan was in motion, my siblings and I hid and waited to see what she would do.
I just got the new Gucci handbag. Have you seen pics of it on my socials? I paid for it with the money I got for trading that stupid baseball. I have some left over. Let's go to the mall tomorrow and buy the new Samsung S24. The S23 is crap and so yesterday.
Then Veronica saw the necklace on the table.
Wow, you won't believe what I'm looking at. This has to be worth a fortune.
Veronica took the bait and right on camera too. We waited until she left. Then my brothers and I high-fived each other before grabbing the camera. The footage was in the perfect angle and showed not only Veronica stealing our mother's family heirloom, but also caught Veronica's conversation admitting to stealing from our siblings. Our mother came home 20 minutes later, and we sat her down as soon as she got in the door. I showed her the footage on the camera, which proved Veronica was stealing from everyone this whole time. Our mother didn't believe it at first, even with the proof, but she quickly went to look for her necklace and saw it was missing. She went to Veronica's room and searched it, finding the family heirloom under her pillow. Then our mother began to search the whole room despite Veronica's crying, finding some of the missing clothes and makeup.
Veronica, how could you do this? You know how important this necklace is to me and you wanted to sell it? You need to return everything right now and you have to apologize to your siblings.
That's not fair. I can't get it all back. I sold most of it already.
Well, you can sell your own clothes then and pay everyone back for the things you stole. Also, you're grounded, so this better never happen again.
But of course, that wasn't the end of things. Since she had been caught stealing from us and had many of her more precious belongings sold to pay for the things she had taken from us, she desperately sought out a way to reclaim what she felt that she deserved. But that meant getting her hands on something valuable that she could sell, and she knew that she couldn't steal from us, as that would only land her in deeper hot water. And so, she decided to ignore the fact that she was grounded and go next door to our neighbor's house, and while they were away at work, see if they had anything that was worth taking. Unfortunately for her, though, seconds after she snuck into their house, she discovered that they had recently bought a guard dog. Once she was in the house, she was trapped with the animal who was only defending their home. The dog saw her as a threat and lunged at her and tore into her leg viciously. By the time the owners came home, they found Veronica outside their back door with a lot of deep wounds on her leg. She had tried to limp away but wasn't able to get far. The police showed up and found that the back door had been broken into, and once they determined that Veronica had broken in, they charged her with breaking and entering. As soon as our mother found out that Veronica broke into our neighbor's house, she grew furious. I had never known her to get that upset, especially with Veronica. But she yelled at her for hours in the hospital. The doctors told her that although she would heal, that she would forever walk with a limp and would have dozens of permanent scars from all the dog bites. Finally, our mother saw Veronica for who she really was, and she was incredibly depressed by what her actions had created. I think for the first time, she realized that her actions had directly created the environment that had created Veronica to be the person that she was. And while I felt sympathy for our mother, I also finally felt vindicated that she at least realized her mistakes. After that, she did start being far more strict with Veronica and started being far more attentive to the rest of us. If nothing else, it really helped to open our mother's eyes, and things finally felt a bit more fair around the house. Sometimes I pity Veronica, but then it serves her right for stealing. What do you think?